What is up, you guys? My name is Sydalexandria. My first name is Sydney. My middle name is Alexandria. And today we are going to be talking about names. You cannot convince me that names do not carry a certain type of energy and that people with the same name have similar energy to a certain extent. Some people have names that suit them more than others. It's really amazing how parents will name their babies when they're pregnant and they just feel like they have a certain name, or sometimes after they come out they're like, this is their name, they look like a this. But also there's gotta be people who are not that intuitive who are naming babies, and that also makes me think that the name that you are given is what you kind of form into, because you're hearing it your whole life. You have this paper that says this is your name. It's kind of like engraved on you in an energetic sense. Or even people who get adopted and then they change their birth name, or like the family alters it. Instead of something that sounds like an island name, they Americanize it, or whatever the case may be around the world. They have kind of both of those blueprints about them. And there's kind of an identity crisis going on there. That's a totally different story, because it's not just the name doing that, it's the whole situation in general. But people who do the multiple different name things, even if you have a name, then you become an actress and you change your name or have this alter ego or whatever the case is, you have multiple energies bestowed upon yourself. Even with me, with choosing to go by Sydney or Sid, there's a little bit of that, but that's so clearly a nickname. It's not as drastic as these other cases. But for example, Sydney, a very common name, especially in the early 2000s. I know a lot of Sydneys who are approximately the same age as me. So that makes the pool of Sydneys even more kind of exact. For instance, Sydneys always look pretty basic, and they are usually fairly attractive looking, but it's never like an above and beyond the most beautiful girl in the world. Like, Sydney is cute but average. She's weird though, and she's very open-minded. She's kind of like floaty, drifty, artsy. She's weird. She has like a weird laugh or some weird noise that she makes. Sydneys are, like I said, kind of basic, but then they have this like weird side to them. And it depends on the Sydney to the level of how far that goes. It could be a scientist, but they have a weird freaking laugh and a weird sense of humor. And they're probably brunette with a basic kind of look to them. Obviously, there's Sydneys of a variety of hair colors, skin colors, eye colors, but no matter what it is, they all kind of look basic, but they're weird. That's what makes a Sydney a Sydney. Sydneys are just not very grounded. They're very much so in their own little daydream world. They're also pretty watery, generally speaking. Watery, airy, fiery, then earthy. That's kind of the order of the vibe of elements that they're giving off. So a lot of Sydneys are pretty spiritual. Like, a girl I went to high school with, also named Sydney, very spiritual. She's the only other spiritual YouTuber I know in my own life, and her name is also Sydney, spelled the same way. My childhood best friend growing up named Sydney. She is like the quirky, has a funny sounding laugh side of Sydney. Also open-minded. I have met so many other Sydneys throughout my life, and they are all very similar. They're into spirituality to a certain extent, or just like open-minded, thinks like certain things are curious and interesting. Maybe they're kind of artsy or creative, but they're in their own little daydream. That's Sydney. Then we have another case of Jeff. My dad's name is Jeff, for reference. I know quite a few 50-year-old-ish Jeffs. They think they can fix anything, and they might be able to. They have a sense of humor, for sure, and depending on the Jeff, it might be funny, it might not be funny. They're also very serious about some things. They're hard workers usually. They also like to be lazy. They need to find a good balance of that. But Jeffs try to fix things. They're a handyman. They might not be the best handyman, and they might be aware that they're not the best handyman. But this name is more general, so it has more of a general meaning. Luke's, my brother's name is Luke. I feel like Luke's have this kind of honorable aura about them. They have some kind of traditional religious beliefs to a certain extent, but they're also kind of open-minded because they're so like humble and honorable to a certain extent. This is like the elevated, super deep interpretation of Luke's, by the way, but that's just kind of the vibe that the name gives off. I feel like the Jeff description was very surface level, but that's just Jeff. And Luke, it does have this kind of like righteous biblical vibe to it. Obviously, there's like a Luke in the Bible. I don't know what he did in the Bible, but usually people who are named Luke have kind of that vibe. I don't want to get into too many names right now, but if you want to comment a name in the description, I can tell you the vibe of it. That was just a few of the ones that I have personally witnessed. Obviously, the more unique names are going to have more of a unique meaning. The more normal the name, the more general of a meaning it's going to have. But I'm sure you guys can attest to the fact that certain people with the same name have certain vibes. And if it's spelled different, that gives off a slightly different vibe too. Like I'm talking about Sydney's Sydney. I don't really know many Sydneys who spell it differently, but there's some who do like an IE, or there's some who do an I instead of the first Y. There's different ways to do it. Cindy, different vibe than Sydney, but also kind of similar if I think about it, because Cindy's are a little weird too, but in more of an elegant way. They're more clumsy than they are weird, if that makes sense. Cindy's are more formal than Sydney's are. Definitely. They're also generally older. You hear girls my age named Sydney. You hear girls my mother's age named Cindy, usually. So that generational difference also contributes. But people named Jeff, I know people named Jeff who are my age, who they're giving off the same, can probably fix stuff that my dad's generation was given off. And there's Lukes who are my age, and there's Lukes who are babies that are given off the same kind of energy. But there is a key factor to the spelling of names and how it influences energy. You have probably heard, oh, you spell this with this letter instead of this letter, there's a different vibe there. Yeah, there totally is. But a reason behind that is probably gematria, numerology. This is super interesting. There's different types of numerology. I've done a video on Pythagorean numerology. I don't think I've done a video on Chaldean numerology or these other numerology systems, but I definitely should because they're really freaking interesting. So you've probably heard of your life path number, where you add up the days of your birthday, 11 plus 22 plus 2001. You bring it to a single digit number, like I'm a life path 9. There's also 11, 22, or 33. Those are like the master numbers. If you get that, you don't break it down. But 11 is a version of 2, 22 is a version of 4, and 33 is a version of 6. Your life path number is your life path number. That's how you calculate it. But when you get into Pythagorean, modern numerology, when you get into these other numerology systems, I think there's Chinese, etc., 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 okay, they have a different alphabet to number correspondence, but you can calculate if you add up all of the letters of your full name at birth, is how I usually do it. But if you want to see these other energies, the Sydalexandria name instead of the Sydney Alexandria last name, then it'll have a different vibe. But my full name at birth adds up to 6, is my expression number, the number corresponding to each letter of my name. Using Pythagorean numerology is 6. So I express myself as somebody who is wanting to do acts of service, okay? My life path number is 9, but my expression number is 6. And then you can also find your soul urge number, which is the vowels of your name added up. okay? Excluding the consonants, just the vowels. And my soul urge number is 9, which is kind of what it sounds like. It's like your soul's urges, okay? So I just have this kind of deep yearning to help humanity. If you're interpreting 9 as being a humanitarian, there's different ways to interpret the number 9, because there have been terrible people throughout history who have their life path or their expression or soul urge number, which are not as commonly used as life path number, as 9. 9 is very powerful. You can do with it what you want. You can be evil, you can be extraordinary. It is what it is. Depends on the person. It's not just these expression number and soul urge numbers, though, that really dictate things. Like if you get into gematria, which is this ancient numerology study, you can look up people's names, countries' names, phrases, advertisements. It is pretty mind-blowing, the number corresponding to these certain phrases that are used, because the elites are aware of this. But that is another reason why names, the spelling of names, matters and influences your energy. Even if you are unaware of it, it does, because that is part of this, like, if you want to call it the coding system in the Matrix. Those phrases are starting, I don't want to say to make more sense to me, because it's not like it makes more sense, but it's starting to become the only way I know how to explain it with words. So yeah, maybe more videos to come on this topic of names, interpreting other names, interpreting the numerology, the gematria of certain names, phrases, slogans, etc. Seriously, comment your name in the comment section and I will tell you what I feel about that name. Or maybe not your name, maybe it's somebody else's name that you're curious my interpretation of it. Unique names, normal names, all in between, different versions of like how you spell different names, because I think this is fun. And you guys probably know already, but I do intuitive and astrological Akashic Records readings. If you guys are interested in that, email me, sydalexandriaegypt@gmail.com. Peace out.